Welcome to the Shepherd's Pie, a slice of hope to raise faithful kids, where we focus on topics that impact young people today. I'm Antony Barone Kolenc, but you can call me Tony. I'm a father of 5 who served in the Air Force for 21 years. I'm now a law professor and a columnist for Practical Homeschooling magazine. I'm also the author of the Harwood Mysteries, an exciting medieval fiction series for kids aged 10 and up. Here on the Shepherd's Pie, we want to inform, inspire, help you to raise happy, healthy, and faithful kids, whether you're a parent, a teacher, a youth leader, a catechist, anyone. On today's episode, we'll be discussing how to connect with youth through the life of St. Joseph and the Holy Family. My guest is Dennis McGeehan, who's a blogger and a longtime youth catechist, and he's found the knack of reaching across generations. And that knack involves St. Joseph, the foster father of Jesus. And in the entertainment review segment of the show, I'll be speaking with a guest reviewer today, Stephen McEvoy, about 2 teen novels about St. Joseph written by British author Corinna Turner. You know, I don't think of myself as being old. If you talk to my kids, I'm ancient, even though I'm only 52. And isn't that the case with most teens and tweens? They look at somebody age 30 and they think they're old. I, for one, can tell you I don't feel old at the age of 52. For that matter, I definitely didn't feel old when I was 30 or even 40. And my wife points out to me that I am old and that I will always be older than her. Be that as it may, for a teen or tween, if they think that 30, 40, or 50 puts you out of touch with the issues that are impacting them, there's going to be a problem connecting. Today's episode answers the question, how can we connect with our youth when they think we're out of touch with the issues that impact them? This past year, we've been celebrating the year of St. Joseph. St. Joseph was the foster father of Jesus. Joseph is known as being a silent man. Joseph is the patron saint of the worker. Joseph has been put forward to us as a model of fatherhood and a model of being a husband. So many this year have turned to St. Joseph as a model, a guide, a protector. So what better way to reach out to youth today than to harness the story of St. Joseph and the Holy Family? And that's exactly where our conversation leads in our interview segment today. In my discussion with my guest today, Dennis McGeehan, we talk about using St. Joseph's life story and that of the Holy Family as a way to connect with our youth. I am here today with Dennis McGeehan, who is a husband, a father of 8, who he homeschooled those children, a martial artist, freelance writer and author, a speaker, a catechist, just a man for all seasons, it appears. And welcome to the show, Dennis.
Thank you, Tony. It's great to be here.
So we're going to be talking today about, how do we reach youth across generations? Both of us have seen kids in different stages of their lives, in different types of capacities, whether they're our children, whether they're being schooled as students, or whether they're students of catechism at the church, youth groups, confirmation. I think we've both done those things. So I really want to talk about it today. How do we reach those kids, especially as we start getting older in our own lives and that generation gap seems to be there. But before we get into that, you have such a fascinating background. I wonder if you could just introduce yourself to the listeners and just tell them a little bit about your stories.
Like you said, my name's Dennis McGeehan. I'm going to be 66 years old this October. Married to a wonderful wife, Suzanne. We have 8 children on earth and 1 who returned to God before she was born. As you said, I've served as a catechist at church, teaching everything from 3rd grade up to confirmation training with high school kids. Martial artist, I started studying judo at age 12. I was promoted up to 3rd degree black belt. I've taught at the college level. I've had my own schools. Grandfather of 2. I'm a freelance writer and author. I write about St. Joseph. I write about parenting matters, especially parenting special needs kids. because my wife and I, we have four of them. And I write about other matters that interest me.
Yeah, so you've got a lot of different angles from which you have seen youth. But I know you also have a pretty compelling life story. What was your situation as a youth?
Well, growing up, my father was an alcoholic. I can remember as if it happened just this morning. It was a bad day at home, and I ran to my mother's room, and my mom had a picture of the Blessed Mother, and I was 5 years old. I knelt down in front of that picture of Mary, begged her for help. It felt like somebody was draping a cape across my shoulders and my back. And then I promised myself that if I ever got married and if I ever had kids, that they were not going to deal with what I dealt with. We ended up getting away from my father when I was 12. And then I went through my teenage years, stopped going to church, went to college, and a friend who I had just met says, "Come on, we're going to church." And then the thought occurred to me, it might be a good place to meet girls. So I went to church with him, and at the end of Mass, the priest invited anybody interested to come back to the conference room where they were going to have a meeting for the Newman Society. But anyway, at that meeting, I met this girl, and that would have been 1974. And in 1983, we ended up getting married.
Do you find that the background that you've had has helped you over the years to relate to the youth?
When I was working with kids and as a catechist, you learn things mom and dad are not together, or worse. I had kids in my judo class, single mom raising a preteen or teenage boy, and she wants me to teach him discipline because she can't discipline him anymore. I ran into that.
When I was teaching CCD, sometimes you get kids in there that they have absolutely no desire to be there. They come from, rough home backgrounds, and you feel like it's going to be impossible to get them interested. What did you do to try to, bridge that gap with them?
Well, it was definitely on a kid-by-kid basis. And I tried to present the story, especially the story of the Holy Family, as if they were a real family, because a lot of times it seemed like they couldn't relate at all. And I said, well, remember, Joseph had to get up in the middle of the night and take Jesus and Mary to Egypt because the ruler of the country was trying to kill Jesus. I said, that's pretty bad. At that point, they were homeless, which kids could relate to. Then they had to go to Egypt, which was a strange land with a strange language. And then Joseph had to start all over again, developing his business as a carpenter. I said, if your dad has lost his job or his mom has lost his, Joseph essentially lost his job.
What I hear you doing are two things. One is you're really trying to show youth that Jesus and his family are very relatable to our own lives and problems. But the other interesting thing, and I know you write about St. Joseph, is it sounds like Joseph is somebody that resonates with you and that you try to have him resonate with, I guess, especially boys?
Well, that goes back to when I was 5 years old, and I made myself that promise that I was going to be the best dad, best husband I could be. And then I meet and marry my wife, and we're married and we're expecting our first child around 1985. And it hit me, I ain't got a clue how to be a really good husband and father. And so I decided, who's the best dad that I can think of? And St. Joseph came to mind. So I began a study of St. Joseph, and that continues up to this day.
We have been speaking with Dennis McGeehan, father, martial arts instructor, and author. So you were devoted to St. Joseph before it was cool, and we had our own year for him.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, probably around 1984, 85 is when I started studying St. Joseph. We were actually in a local Catholic bookstore, and I found this book called The Life and Glories of St. Joseph, written by a man named Edward Healy Thompson. And the book was written in 1888, and it's written in the language of the academics of the time. Brought it home, started to read it, and over the next several years, I couldn't get past page 50 in that book. It was beyond my ability to comprehend. took it to Holy Hour with me. And I don't think I read more than 3 pages in an hour over the next several years. But there in front of the tabernacle, one paragraph, one sentence at a time, I began to understand what the author was saying about St. Joseph. And it blew me away because I'm a cradle Catholic and I never heard any of this stuff before. What makes this book so interesting is it's not his thoughts or opinions. It's based on the teachings of some 16th century, 17th century Spanish theologians. And their writings are based upon some guys named Augustine, Irenaeus, St. Francis de Sales.
You were able to get in touch then finally with this idea of St. Joseph, I guess, as a father.
Yeah, St. Joseph as a human being, as a real person, as a real man. And the person he had to be the spouse of Mary and the earthly father of Jesus.
And did you find that by relating to Joseph like that and trying to convey that when you were teaching, it sounds like especially boys, that boys were responding to that?
I think so, yes. I've talked to my own children, my sons, about it. And when I was teaching religion class, I would refer to St. Joseph a lot. And I mean, it wasn't like a miracle they changed into the most ardent CCD attending kid in history. It wasn't anything like that at all. But I knew they were listening because every so often I would say something one week, and then a couple of weeks later, one of the kids would ask a question related to what I had told them a couple of weeks ago. So it's like, aha, they are hearing what I'm saying.
Again, speaking with Dennis McGeehan, author and homeschooling father of 8, catechist, and martial arts instructor for 40 years. What do you think resonated with them the most about Joseph?
I think the fact that they finally realized, maybe for the first time, that Joseph had a hard life and their lives weren't always easy. I mean, when I was in Catholic school for 8 years, we were taught about the Holy Family, and we were taught a lot of prayers for Mary and for Jesus, and the teaching always concentrated on the spiritual realm. But the fact of the matter is that Jesus, Mary, and Joseph lived in the physical realm. Joseph worked as a carpenter. He got hot, he got dirty, he got sweaty. His muscles probably ached. Mary was cooking, cleaning, baking, sewing. Jesus was fetching water and wood and helping his father in the shop. They were doing hard physical work, and they were living in a country that was occupied with a murdering maniac on the throne in Herod. And Joseph, because he was descended from David, could lay a claim to the throne. And if word of that got out, that would have been a death sentence for Joseph.
I can see how youth would really respond to this kind of discussion because, I mean, you're not preaching at them. You're not talking about how they should pray or should do anything. You're telling them a compelling story of real people. And in some ways, maybe that's part of what our kids are missing right now is they don't view church and God as real. They're not really connecting with them as real human beings who, walked the same path that they're walking in their lives. And it sounds like the more that you can make that connection, the more chance you have of connecting them to the Holy Family.
That's what I tried to do. And like I said, I think I made a connection. I mean, the kids were normal kids. They were watching the movies and the TV shows that the kids were watching in the time. I remember one time we got into a discussion about superheroes. And I didn't deal with St. Joseph, but I said, what would you think about a person that could be in 2 places at one time? And they all looked at me like what are you talking about? And I said, there's a man named Padre Pio. And there are witnesses that say he was here in Italy where he lived in the monastery. At the same time, he was at a meeting in another country. He could bilocate. And they looked at me like, we never heard of it. And that kind of got their attention.
Now, you taught martial arts for a while with your school, and so you've seen a lot of youth, but that wasn't a religious environment. I'm just curious if you were able to use any of what you've been talking about to connect to your students to help them learn discipline and to help them mature.
Actually, yes, and that's because I'm a judo student, a judo instructor. Judo was developed by a man named Dr. Jigoro Kano. in 1882. Dr. Kano was interested. He was an educator. He had a PhD in education. He was interested in a method of study that would improve the individual's character as a person. And also, if he got enough people improved, he thought we could improve society. So that was his goal. So when I was teaching judo, I stressed the importance of proper training. You take care of each other. And even if what randori, which is free fighting, where you're both trying to throw the other person and you're resisting as hard as you can not to get thrown, you do it in such a way that you still take care of each other. That winning at any cost is not the goal. In fact, winning at any cost is not judo. And I stress that. I think it had some impact because I've had parents who I've taught their kids to come back to me 10 or 15 years later and ask me, are you still teaching? We had another kid and I want you to be their instructor.
What about when you were homeschooling and even as a grandparent and as a parent of boys, were you using stories of Joseph, stories of Jesus, the man, to teach lessons to them?
The homeschooling situation was my wife did the primary teaching at home while I went to work because she was self-employed. I had a guaranteed paycheck. So for practical purposes, she did a large amount of the book work and such with the kids. In the evening, when I came home from work, I did the out-of-the-house activities, the judo class, the scouts, we did community theater, and we did other things as a family. And I would stress the importance of doing things as a family. And then we would have work projects around the house, and we would do those projects together as a family, whether it was shoveling shale in the driveway to level it out, or building a fence in the yard, or painting the house, or dealing with emergencies. We were homeless for 6 months when we had a house fire, and that brought us closer together in many ways. We dealt with that as a family. And that was like the Holy Family. It was just Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, but they were doing things together, especially when Jesus was older. Stories from the early church about when they were in Egypt, and then the teachings of the church fathers about Jesus helping Joseph in the carpenter shop and things like that.
And we're speaking to Dennis McGeehan, a author, homeschooling father of 8, and a man who writes about St. Joseph. Let me ask you, as we head into just our final few minutes here, what advice might you have to especially adults who are a little bit older and are trying to connect with youth, whether it be in their youth group or with their grandkids? Do you have any advice that you've learned that you could share with them on how to be more effective in that way?
The best advice I can give anybody is that something's important to you that you want your children or grandchildren to do, then they have to see you doing it. If you want them to pray, they need to see you pray, and ideally you should take the time to pray with them. If you want them to go to church, you need to get yourself to church. If you want to teach them to love, to be a loving husband and father, and that can be tough. Love can be exhausting. It means doing things that need done when you really don't want to do them, and trying to do them with a smile on your face or a gentle heart. They'll see that, and that'll have more of an impact than any words that you can say.
All right, Dennis, I've really enjoyed our conversation today. Before we wrap up, I know that you, as an author, have put out some books. Can you speak to those books so if our listeners have any interest in, especially Joseph?
Yes, I've written 2 books. One is called The Diaries of Joseph and Mary. The book is composed of 2 parts, where the first part is diaries entries from the time when Joseph was a small child and Mary was a small child. And then in the back of the book, there's an appendix, 101 questions and answers about St. Joseph. I also have an ebook out that I put out a long time ago, How to Select the Best Martial Arts Class for Your Child. And then I have a blog site, www.warriorsworlddad.com, where I write about St. Joseph and parenting and other things. And I even have some videos on YouTube. Just search Dennis McGeehan, and you'll find the videos. I've done a lot on St. Joseph there.
Wonderful. Dennis, thank you again. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today.
Tony, thanks for the opportunity. I really enjoyed it.
This week I have a guest reviewer for the entertainment review segment of the show. Stephen McEvoy is an avid blogger and book reviewer who reads over 150 books a year. He has over 200 book reviews published, and his blog, bookreviewsandmore.ca, is viewed by thousands of readers each week. He's a husband and a father of 4, and oh, by the way, he also has time for a day job as an IT specialist. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So you are here today to review 2 books by a wonderful author who I know from the United Kingdom, Corinna Turner, Old Men Don't Walk to Egypt, and a novella called Do Carpenters Dream of Wooden Sheep, both about St. Joseph in some way. So let's start this by talking about Old Men Don't Walk to Egypt. What is the premise of that book?
The premise of the book is a young girl is in school and she's having some problems, particularly with her boyfriend. And she has to do a project on a saint. And a different friend at school who's a bit of a geek and an outcast suggests St. Joseph. So as she starts this project on St. Joseph and she is reading and learning about St. Joseph, she discovers that she could really use him in her life and in her corner. And she starts praying to him a bit. And the more she learns, the closer she gets to St. Joseph, and the more she starts figuring out some of the pieces and problems in her life.
And this is part of Corinna's Friends in High Places series. What is that series?
It's a series that focuses on a specific saint, but from the perspective of someone who's a teen or a young adult who is learning about that saint and how that saint can relate to them in their life.
And what did you think? Is this a good book for kids?
I think it's a fantastic book for kids. I was almost brought to tears as a father of daughters reading this book. The main character is being blackmailed by her boyfriend because she sent him one picture of herself in a towel trying to look cute. And he's now asking for more pictures and threatening to send these pictures to the school. And she doesn't know how to handle this.
What age range would you recommend for this book?
The message, I think, is good for a lot of age ranges, but I would recommend it for readers probably about 12 to 16, 12 to 18.
And so what is it you really liked about this book?
What I liked is the fact that the young girl realizes that she's struggling. She's afraid to tell her mom what's going on because she's in fear of how her mom's going to take it and handle it. But she does have this one good friend that is a very devout Catholic who's encouraging her not only in her project academically and in her life, but also encouraging her to do the right thing and talk to her mother and bring these things to light. Also, as I mentioned, as a father of daughters, even just reading it from that perspective, it was deeply moving.
And does St. Joseph make an appearance in the book anywhere?
He does in a couple of different ways. The book kind of runs in 2 parallel paths. One is the main character's story as she is working through her life. The second is as she learns about St. Joseph, she's having dreams. And the more she learns about him, the more she changes her own life.
Is there anything in the story parents should be concerned about?
Well, there is the attempted blackmail by Katie's boyfriend. He is physically abusive at one point in time. So there are some heavy topics. I think it would be a great book to either have a child read and then discuss with them or to read with the child.
All right, now this isn't the only St. Joseph book that Corinna has recently released. She also has this novella, Do Carpenters Dream of Wooden Sheep? What is that about?
It is a classic science fiction retelling of the story of St. Joseph and Mary. It's set in a far future. It is basically the biblical story of the Annunciation, the journey to Egypt and the return, but it's told in a futuristic setting. The title itself is a play on Philip K. Dick's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?
And that was the short story that Blade Runner was based on?
Yes, that's correct.
Does she bring in Blade Runner any other way?
Not really. It's more the title and the growth. One of the interesting things in this story is that when Joseph and Mary head to Egypt, they're not alone. Joseph's brother is actually with them. And his story, which is completely fictionalized from Corinna's perspective, Razim is his name, but it's a fantastic read.
Yeah, and I did get a chance to read that one, and it's very, very science fiction.
But because of that, you see the story that we are so familiar with and that we've heard so many versions and interpretations of in a very different way. And one of the great things that she does is at the end of this book, she has the complete scriptural account that we have of Joseph and these interactions and draws very closely from that true source.
And what age range would you recommend for this novella?
This one I could actually recommend to a younger age for strong readers that are into the science fiction genre. In my own youth, this would have been the type of story I would have read grade 5, grade 6, anywhere through towards the end of high school.
And is there anything that parents would be concerned about with this one?
While they are in Egypt, there is a little bit of persecution that they experience. So it is, again, it's a book that you could read and have a great conversation about, or it's a book that you could read and it's just a really good story.
Wonderful. Well, we have been speaking with my guest reviewer this week, Stephen McEvoy, avid blogger and book reviewer, about Corinna Turner's 2 books on St. Joseph, Old Men Don't Walk to Egypt and Do Carpenters Dream of Wooden Sheep. And you can find these books through the CatholicTeenBooks.com website, and I will have a link on my website to Corinna's books and to that website, as well as to our guest reviewer's blog. And what's the name of your blog, Stephen?
Book reviews and more.
Well, thank you so much for reviewing these 2 books for us this week.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure to be on the show.
That's all the time we have for today's show. We spoke with blogger and youth catechist Dennis McGeehan about using the story of St. Joseph and the Holy Family to connect with our youth. And we spoke with our guest reviewer, Stephen McEvoy, about 2 of Corinna Turner's novels about St. Joseph, Old Men Don't Walk to Egypt, and Do Carpenters Dream of Wooden Sheep. Again, this is Antony Barone Kolenc, and this has been The Shepherd's Pie. If any of you listening today have a question for me or a topic you'd like us to cover on the show, just drop us a line on my website at antonykolenc.com. That's AntonyKolenc.com. Also, if you visit my website, you can learn more about my historical fiction series, The Harwood Mysteries. I'll end as always with my wife's favorite scripture quote from Romans 8:28. We know that all things work for good for those who love God, who are called according to his purpose. May the Lord bless and keep you this week.